Network proudly presents a weekly exploration of various spiritual practices with renowned spiritual authors, coaches, teachers, and Dr. Tracy Brown, RScP.
And now, here's Tracy.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here, poetry, prayer, and practice. If by some chance this is your first time seeing the show, the title really does explain what this show is all about. Poetry and how it connects into our spiritual grounding or how we can use it as a spiritual practice. Prayer, which of course for many people automatically connects to spirituality and how do we use prayer more? How does prayer really work? So sometimes we talk about that, and practices, especially those spiritual practices that maybe we've created for ourselves, or they're not as common as maybe the big 3 or 4 that everyone always talks about. So some of our shows really dive into what are spiritual practices that you can use, or we actually use our time together to do spiritual practice in community. Poetry, prayer, practice. I couldn't decide on one, and so I decided that throughout the year, I would have the opportunity to explore all 3. It is January 2024, and I don't know about you, but for me, there's a lot of time in the last week of 1 year and in the first month of the next year where I do go to poetry a lot to help me, to help remind myself of the heart nature of life and to help me anchor into the feeling tone of how I want to enter the year as well. So in today's show, we are going to pretty much focus on poetry and the message from different poems. And I'm going to share with you a few of the poems that have really either hit me strongly or grounded me during the last couple of weeks of 2023 and the first couple of weeks of 2024. And I'm going to start with a Howard Thurman poem that many people use. Howard Thurman, the mystic and theologian author, he has a set of 3 poems. He actually has a number of poems that he wrote about Christmas and the holidays. But the set of 3 that are most popular, one is about leading up to Christmas and rebirthing Christ consciousness. One is about the candles of Christmas, the candles that he would light, or he encourages us to light, that represent translating the potential or the joy of Christmas into actual work and actually demonstrating love in the world. And then the third one is this one, the work of Christmas, that I'm going to share with you. The work of Christmas reminds us that, okay, so we celebrate Christmas and there's a nativity scene. And when that is done, what is the work that is required of us? So this is the work of Christmas by Howard Thurman. When the song of the angels is stilled, and when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and the princes are home, when the shepherds are back with with their flock. The work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among brothers, to make music from the heart in you, in me, in all mankind. I love this poem. And I do read it the week after Christmas and the first week of the year. Often I'll post it on social media. Sometimes I print it out and post it in my bathroom where I can see it, because for me, it does end the year and begin the next year with a reminder that the celebration of Christmas, right? The holiday of Christmas is simply the starting point. Like we're in the starting gate, ready to go. So I'm going to read it again and let you just like take that in. The work of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among brothers, to make music from the heart in you, in me, in all mankind. And I love this reminder, as I hope you do as well. It's our job to find the lost, those who are lost, and to give them hope and to give them direction, or to share a vision, or to build something together. It's our responsibility to heal the broken. And if you're in Science of Mind, you know that Ernest Holmes reminds us, really, there's nothing to heal, only the truth to reveal. So we heal the broken by seeing and helping others see within themselves the truth of them, so that the brokenness, or the feeling of brokenness, or the perception of brokenness, or the sense of being broken or not fitting in disappears when the reminder that everyone is born an original blessing and has access to the power to live a life they love, to feed the hungry. Maybe you're like me and agree that there's really no excuse, no acceptable excuse that people in the country of the United States of America, but I would say anywhere in the world, that there is plenty of food, and we are responsible for the fact that people go hungry. To release the prisoner. And I love this line, because sometimes people say, well, people are in prison because they did something bad and they should be there and we don't want to release them. But when I read this poem, I am reminded that we are all prisoners of our false beliefs. We are all prisoners of societal norms that disregard people, discount people, eliminate or separate people. And that in that sense, it's not just the literal prisoner of a prison system, except our false beliefs and our societal norms are prisons. They are systematically locking us into something that is less than what we have been created to be. To rebuild the nations, I could do the whole show on how do we bring spiritual principle forward to rebuild nations and to rebuild the brothership among people, among nations, among or between people in the same neighborhood or workplace, to bring peace among brothers and to make music from the heart in you, in me, in all mankind. So this is an example for me of when a poem can be inspiring and also when it can give us the guidance or the direction we need or the reminder we need to make our spiritual principles live and breathe in our individual lives as well as in the lives of all humanity. It is not impossible. And that's one of the reasons I love using poetry to open up or to remind me of what is possible. Now, none of you will be surprised that the second poem I'm going to share today as we jumpstart into 2024 is a Shalane Harkin poem. If you have followed the show, you know that Tracy Brown is a big Shalane Harkin fan. Shalane Harkin, the mystic poet. And the hardest thing was choosing one. Honestly, right? I can go through the 4 or 5 books I have with Shalane Harkin poetry, and I'm looking for a poem to share, and I'll check one, and 3 pages later, I'll check another, and 5 pages later, I'll check another, right? And I end up with like 30 poems to choose from for whatever that talk is, or for today, wanting to feature one poem. But this one kept coming up when I would go back and forth between 4 or 5 poems. This one, for whatever reason, is the one that won the competition today. And it's titled The Wound. And it won the competition today. But again, I was looking at about 25 or 30 poems, all of which I have used in the last 3 to 4 weeks to end the year and start a new year. So I wasn't just thumbing through the books randomly. I was looking at the ones that I had been reading to round out 2023 and jumpstart 2024. And I hope this one will resonate with you as well. It's titled The Wound. The only advice I have for you is to not fix the wound. The sirens of your pain will call you in again and again. Please stop resisting them. When you allow this deep dive to retrieve your laughter, your tears, your prayers, your song, your poetry, you are communicating the language of the soul to this forgetful world. Repeating. The Wound by Shalane Harkin. The only advice I have for you is to not fix the wound. The sirens of your pain will call you in again and again. Please stop resisting them. When you allow this deep dive to retrieve your laughter, your tears, your prayers, your song, and your poetry, you are communicating the language of the soul to this forgetful world. Shalane Harkin, The Wound. I love this for year end and year beginning for a couple of reasons. A lot of times at the end of the year, we spiritually infatuated people will be like, okay, I'm going to let go of that. Okay, I'm going to ignore this. Okay, that's over. I'm going to leave it behind. And this poem reminds me that sometimes when there is a wound, I don't want to fix it or ignore it or spiritually bypass it, because the wound or the pain in itself is a warning symbol, or it's information that is designed to help me then choose exactly what I do want. Or it is designed to kind of force me to, or at least give me the opportunity to share what I have learned from that pain. And as Shalan writes, my laughter, my tears, my prayers, my song, my poetry is communicating the language of the soul to this forgetful world. So I need to bring that pain, that wound forward. Now, I need to bring it forward in a healthy way, or in a way that serves my continued evolution and the positive evolution of the people who are exposed to or introduced to the wound. So I don't read the poem, The Wound, as an encouragement to be to use your wound as an excuse for toxic or negative behavior. I read this poem as saying, everybody has wounds, everybody has pain. And when we actually bring that into the world, express it, share it, and then heal it, not ignore it, not pretend it doesn't exist, but in the process of experiencing it, understanding it, expressing it, and healing it, we also not only heal ourselves, but we remind this forgetful world of what is at the crux of bringing heaven to earth, of living a life you love, of navigating the human challenges that we all navigate. So that is why The Wound by Shalan Harkin made it to this list. If you are wondering which Shalan Harkin book that this poem is in, it is in Susceptible to Light, poetry by Shalan Harkin. And it's funny because several of the other poems are in newer books, but this one was the one that I must have read it 10 times at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, to remind myself not to sweep under the rug those things that were challenging during 2023. And it really, for me, it really helped me say, Tracy, what do you want? Not what did you learn from that, not that. How do you want to use that pain or that mistake or that challenge? How do you want to use it as you design 2024? And I don't always think of challenges in that way, but this time I did. And that thought was inspired by Shalan and the poem, The Wound. Next, I'm going to share with you, and today, again, if you just joined in, I'm sharing poetry that either inspires or poetry that helped me close out one year and jump into the next year. And so these next couple of short poems are from Ruby Dee. Now, many of you may know or may have heard of Ruby Dee, that actress who was married to Ossie Davis, and they've been a staple in theater and films for decades, or they were before their transition. They were staples for decades and decades in theater and in movies. And not so many people know that Ruby Dee was also a poet. She wrote a lot of poetry. And the only book, though, that I am aware of was the book My One Good Nerve, that came out in the mid 1980s. And I am looking for a particular poem that I'm not seeing. So I'm going to read the one that I actually read from where I actually marked. So one of my many favorites, and these are short, so I'm going to read more than one. Um, the first one is I Was Always. And I think what I'll say before I read it is that as you hear this poem, I think you will understand immediately why it is such a good poem for the beginning of the year. I Was Always by Ruby Dee. I was always blaming other folks for the slops that fell on me, till I looked at myself standing in a perfect spot for the landing. Repeating, I was always. I was always blaming other folks for the slops that fell on me, till I looked at myself standing in the perfect spot for the landing. By Ruby Dee. Okay, maybe you're not like me. Maybe you don't ever have a realization that I must have signed up for that because I, I put myself right in the middle of that situation, right? Or I knew better because I have a history with this person. Yet, why am I making them the villain and myself the victim when all I needed to do was create some different boundaries and behave differently? Like I actually have control over who I interact with on a regular basis, right? And and so I love reading this at the beginning of the year because it always makes me stop and take responsibility for not every single thing that happens to me, but take responsibility where I can and not put myself in situations or with people who I know. Maya Angelou has a very famous quote: when people show you who they are the first time, believe them. Like, okay, why am I acting surprised? Why am I being the victim when I already know? I already know better, or I already know what's probable, because there's going to be enough other things that happen that I have no idea are coming. People I'm going to interact with who are going to surprise me or catch me off guard. But as Ruby Dee writes in this very short, but I think very powerful poem, I looked at myself standing in a perfect spot for the landing. Okay, move to a different spot. Another Ruby Dee poem also that for me is very important, and I'll share with you why I think it's important for you and for everyone else. It's called Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill moved up on a hill to get away from the slaughter, and things were going real swell until a minority married their daughter. Repeating, Jack and Jill moved up on a hill to get away from the slaughter, and things were going real swell until a minority married their daughter. Ruby D. So for me, this poem is about race, and it is not about race, or it's about race and it's about so much more. Like when you think about the pattern of separation and judgment and how much we have in societies around the globe have invested in separating people and discounting people and discriminating against people, whether that's based on race or age or gender, whether it's based on sexual orientation or gender identity, whether it's based on religion. We have these ideas about the minority, if we are part of the majority or the dominant group or the group the norms are established around, that there's something wrong with the minority and we move away. And sometimes it's not that we move away in neighborhoods. We move away and we create a wall. We move away and we refuse to engage. We move away from interaction, from building relationship, from learning from each other or about each other. And in that running away or building a wall, we pretend that it is getting us away from something bad. And then I love these last two lines. And things were going real swell until a minority married their daughter. So when I think about, things that are going on around the globe today, if I know someone and then their daughter married someone of a different religion, different faith, or someone who they didn't expect their daughter to marry because she has fallen in love with someone who is the same gender, right? I think this is so important for us when we are going into a new year to recognize our biases and to make a decision that no, I am going to take a stand, or I am going to be a stand, an example for love in the world. Those of us who are spiritually guided and spiritually directed, that's the least that we can do. To be a stand for love, to be a stand for respect, to be a stand for peace, not only in our individual lives, but in the lives of all humanity. And so that's one of the reasons that I often refer to that particular Ruby D poem at the beginning of the year. I hope this is helpful to you. I hope it's giving you something to think about and a way to remember that poetry can be your entry point into affirming your spiritual principles that you believe in inspiring you to live those spiritual principles or to apply them in your everyday lives. The next two poems I'm going to share with you are from I will say this. Before being introduced to Shalane Harkin a couple of years ago, I would say that Paul Laurence Dunbar is my favorite poet, hands down. Now, I have to admit that it's not quite a tie, but Shalane Harkin is really close. So Paul Laurence Dunbar, my favorite poet of all time. And the first poem that I'm going to share is We Wear the Mask. We wear the mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile, with torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. Now, some might say, well, wait a minute, Tracy, that's kind of sad to start the year. But for me, it is the reminder that there are too many people in the world, and sometimes I'm one of them, who will wear the mask and pretend that the pain of racism or the pain of gender inequity or the pain of separation in any way can sometimes be so overpowering. So for me, this is a good balance to the previous poem from Shalane Harkin about don't heal the wound, right? Show the wound or use the wound as a way to remind the world of its divinity. And in a certain way, We Wear the Mask by Paul Laurence Dunbar does the same thing for me. For me, what it does is it reminds me not to only, like, to be aware of the pain and to use it, but there are times not to share it or not to let people know that they are hurting you. For me, if it's not helpful in moving toward a better outcome. It's also, We Wear the Mask is also for me an opportunity to acknowledge that we live in a world where there has been a lot of pain perpetrated, not just on African Americans, that anybody could read this poem, We Wear the Mask, who is in a group that feels they have had to hide their pain. It could be a woman who has been in a domestic violence situation, or it could be someone who in Egypt is a Coptic Christian and has felt that they've been in situations where they really have been mistreated or misunderstood, and yet they have to wear the mask that, oh, we fit in, or Nubians, people from Nubian culture, or different cultures around the world. So We Wear the Mask is a poem that if I don't read it any other time during the year, I definitely read it in the beginning of the year to remind myself. There may be times when I need to or choose to wear the mask. And it is a self-survival method or resource or tool or approach, not one to make other people feel safe. A second, much lighter poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar is Just Whistle a Bit. And so let's have a little fun. Let's shift the mood a little bit. And I'm going to share with you Just Whistle a Bit. Paul Laurence Dunbar was known for the poetry that he wrote that was in dialect, and this is one of those. Just whistle a bit if the day be dark and the sky be overcast. If mute be the voice of the piping lark, why, pipe your own small blast. And it's wonderful how over the gray sky track the truant warbler comes stealing back. But why need he come? For your soul's at rest. And the song in your heart, that is best. Just whistle a bit if the night be drear and the stars refuse to shine. And a gleam that mocks the starlight clear within you glows benign. till the dearth of light in the glooming skies is lost to the sight of your soul-lit eyes. What matters the absence of moon or star? The light within is best by far. Just whistle a bit if there is work to do with the mind or in the soil, and your note will turn out a talisman true to exercise grim toil. It will lighten your burden and make you feel that there's nothing like work as a sauce for a meal. And with song in your heart and the meal in its place, there'll be joy in your bosom and light in your face. Just whistle a bit if your heart be sore. 'Tis a wonderful balm for pain. Just pipe some old melody o'er and o'er till it soothes like summer rain. And perhaps 'twould be best in a later day, when death comes stalking down the way, to knock at your bosom and see if you're fit. Then, as you wait calmly, just whistle a bit. So I love the lightheartedness of this, but it's really good advice. And it really aligns with what we teach spiritually, right? Like what is happening outside of you cannot determine your attitude. It does not create your defined limitations. It does not define who you are. And so you have within you what Paul Lawrence Dunbar refers to as, right, just whistle a bit, because it is from the inside out that you determine your happiness, your joy, your peace. And even when facing death, because death is a normal part of the process, of the human process. So even when facing death, that there, as you are waiting calmly for that to happen, you can whistle a bit. Now, I'm not a whistler, so I'm not attracted to this poem because it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna whistle. I'm gonna whistle while I work, or I'm not a whistler. But the energy of whistling, of taking it within and going from the inside out to claim the best day possible, to see the and recognize the good things of what is going on. I don't need the bird to sing to let me feel that. I don't need to have anyone outside of me tell me, oh, you should feel good, right? This poem reminds me of that. And I've got several other poems here, but I think I'm just going to end with this one because it's a little long. And it is one of the poems that I really do use in the first week of the year, and always reading it out loud to myself. And some years I even will record it and then play it back every day, like during the first month of the year, because it is so powerful. It's a poem that probably is not new to many of you if you are on the New Thought Media Network, because it became an instant classic. Let's see when this was written. Instant classic in 1999. Orion Mountain Dreamer had been sharing or reciting this poem for a while, but it came out in a book titled The Invitation because it had gained so much popularity in the late 90s. But since 1999, when the book came out, right, millions more people were exposed to the poem and it became an instant classic. And as I read the invitation, I'm going to be taking it again one more time about in the context of what is it inviting me to be? Who is it inviting me to be? And how is it inviting me to be really selective about the people I engage with in my life? Are they people who have accepted this invitation? Or are they people who will help me live in alignment with this invitation? So the invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for. And if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with the pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own. If you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day. And if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will still stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. This is the invitation to a beautiful, fulfilling, spirit-guided life. And I hope these poems and maybe others that really resonate with you, that you use them as a way to guide yourself into the best year yet. My name is Tracy Brown. This is Poetry, Prayer, and Practice. And today we have focused on poetry and how it can support us in living the kinds of life that we desire, the kind of lives that we desire and that we aspire to. I hope that you'll join me again next week on Poetry, Prayer, and Practice. Bye for now.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week, or watch on demand at www.ntmedia.org or youtube.com/New Thought Media Network. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Learn more at www.ntmedia.org.